Big time fight coming up this weekend. We have Wolverhampton's own, the Black Country banger, Jai Herbert, looking to make it 2 in a row, taking on the Georgian Spaniard. You know him as El Matador. It is Ilia Topuria hopping up on short notice at lightweight. And for Topuria, it's been a little bit of a disappointment. Now, we're going to take this in a little bit of a different direction because he's 11-0 in MMA.
I was just finisher. Say, as disappointing as like one of the bright young stars in the sport can be.
He's a finisher to the nth degree. He picked up a big time win as a decent favorite over Ryan Hall his last time out. But the disappointment comes in the fact that he was supposed to take on Movsar Evloev a few months ago, back at the end of January. Now, Evloev withdraws from that fight, and then Topuria can't make it to the scales to take on Charles Jourdain. So that's where my disappointment stands. I would have loved to have seen the fight against Evloev. I would have loved to have seen the fight against Charles Jourdain. And depending on where this fight truly falls on the card is where we'll get a standpoint of, okay, just where is Ilia Topuria when it comes to the good graces of the promotion. But what I can tell you is he does draw a bit of a favorable matchup against Jai Herbert. Now, for Herbert, this guy, former Cage Warriors champion, you absolutely love to see it, and I have it in my notes. This is his first fight since Cage Warriors 109 to take place back in London, and that is what you love to see, to take place back in England, I should say. That was October of 2019, and for Jai Herbert, I listened to an interview that he did, and I want to make sure I give credit where it's due. We talk about that all the time with Abs Talks, where he said, if you look at my opponents compared to his opponents, there's no comparison, really. Don't compare your opponents to other people's opponents. That's the worst thing you can do, Jai Herbert. I don't necessarily love it. For Ilia Topuria, he should have been a Cage Warriors champion at bantamweight. Missed weight big time against Brian Boulon. Those guys actually fought on the same card on that night. For Topuria, got a little bit more seasoning outside of that promotion. He's a guy that bounced around from promotion to promotion. I love the camp that Ilia Topuria has for this fight at Clement Club, training with Guram Kutataladze and Merab Duashvili and his brother, younger Topuria. We saw that even tonight. I say tonight, we're actually taping on Saturday. The fact that Javid Bashrat, his brother, picked up a giant win. Mike Grundy,
I love that he gave his brother shine too. He was like, yeah, tell me, like, no, get him in the UFC too.
And Mike Grundy, his brother, just became an amateur. He fights this weekend too. So really cool to see these guys who have brothers in MMA, training, fighting, winning. Now, Matt, when it comes to this fight, this is a style versus style fight. Jai Herbert knows that. Ilia Topuria knows that. Jai Herbert has lethal stand-up when he can bring it together. We saw that in the regional scene. We saw that in his last fight against Kamal Worthy. Ilia Topuria can box, mainly known for his grappling and how great he is. But if you look at his fight against Damon Jackson, got it done on the feet. If you look at his fight against Ryan Hall, he pounded him out like a cheap Sunday morning.
Wow. For Ilia Topuria, you did mention it early on in the video. This is an extremely favorable matchup for him. And I do worry a little bit about him fighting at lightweight now, because you had mentioned it. He missed weight for a bantamweight fight. And now he's fighting at lightweight. That's a little concerning. Like, people don't normally make 2 jumps up in weight. And I understand it's because he had those weight misses, or the weight issue, I should say, in his last fight. But that is a little weird, because I think if you've watched him compete, frame-wise, he doesn't fit into this division at all. Like, I couldn't imagine Topuria fighting, like, the top guys at 155. I know Charles Oliveira fought at 145, but think about how much bigger Charles Oliveira is than a guy like Topuria. So I do think that he will go back down and do his best work at 145. But this matchup, I was saying it before we started filming, this reminds me a lot of when the UFC made Calvin Gastelum move up to 185 initially, before he did it against Tim Kennedy and went on his run, when he fought Nate Marquardt. And it was a really sad fight. Marquardt was very much past his prime. But Calvin beat the brakes off him, and it was a case where you have one guy who is supremely skilled and in his prime against another guy who his best areas might be able to cancel out some of the younger guys' best areas. But if I'm only working at my strengths, and if my strengths are 50-50 with you, what's my plan B going to be? And that's what I worry about with Jai Herbert, because like you mentioned, is his stand-up good? Yes, it's very good. Has explosive hands, can put his combinations together really good, but he has a double-edged sword on the feet, and it's that he's not the most durable guy in the world. And Alistair Overeem proved that in his heavyweight career. Alistair Overeem, technically, is one of the greatest strikers ever. Big Ben Rothwell knocked him out, though. You know what I mean? Just because durability, when it's not really at the level of your striking, you can fold to some lesser fighters sometimes. And with Jai Herbert, I do worry about him eating the power of Topuria, even up a weight class from where Topuria normally is. And I know we're going to talk more about Topuria's grappling, but the way I look at this fight is, it's going to be fairly 50-50 on the feet. Ilia can put together his boxing combinations extremely well, and I do think defensively on the feet, he's smart enough to where he's not going to get caught by a big shot early. And the second this fight hits the mat, and I mean the second it hits the mat, Topuria's not the type of guy who's going to sit in your guard and let minutes go by. He's going to try to pass, put pressure on you, really make things uncomfortable on you in the bottom position. So just for Topuria, okay, on the feet, if everything's not going your way, I still think you have a chance to win rounds against Jai Herbert. And on the mat, I don't really think Jai Herbert has the continual success in grappling to really be able to hang with a guy like Topuria.
This is one of those fights where a lot of people might tell you, Ilia Topuria, he's the hottest prospect in MMA. I think he is right now. Honest to goodness, I think he's one of the hottest prospects in MMA. I'll counter that with Jai Herbert because early on he has to establish the reach, he has to establish the size, and we talked about it. You've got Ilia Topuria, who used to compete at 135, in this fight at 155 against Jai Herbert, who's 6'1", and has a massive 8-inch reach advantage. And for Jai Herbert, his takedown defense is his downfall. You look at the fights that he's had, though. Francisco Trinaldo went 2 of 3 on takedown attempts, cold cocked him, knocked him out. Herbert's got that hand up there, and Herb Dean decided, I'm going to let this one simmer a little bit.
That was a beautiful knockout by old man Trinaldo, though.
And for Renato Moicano, he went 5 of 7 in his takedown attempts. So if you do look at it, not great takedown defense, 30% in the UFC out of the 3 fights. He's 1-2 in those fights. But you look at it, he trains out of Team Renegade BJJ, a gym that I brought up time and time again on this channel because Arnold Allen's at the gym. Tom Breeze is at the gym, who's got a fight in the main event of Levels Fight League. Middleweight title. You might not have known Tom Breeze was no longer in the UFC, but he is, and he's got a fight right there. So I look at this one as Jai Herbert, he's trained there for a long time, and it's one of those things that we just haven't seen his offensive and defensive grappling kind of press up to the challenges that we've seen. For Ilia Topuria, again, it is his bread and butter, and so it is kind of tricky. Again, in that Bulan fight, he missed weight at 139.5. We knew 135 might not be the division for him, but you don't like to see young guys miss weight that much. No. So when it comes to a fight like this, we look at the odds, and Topuria open to minus 500. He's minus 390 right now. For Herbert, open to plus 375. He's plus 295. We have a look at the Tapology votes very early on. Surprised us there to you, Matt. But I will hedge it, and I will say, Ilia Topuria, I'm going to say over under 87.5%.
I'll say over.
I'm going to say over. We have a look at the votes. Wow. 452 total votes, 94% Topuria, 9% by decision, 18% by submission, 67% by knockout. Sometimes the math doesn't always shake out. The 6% that have Herbert, 57% by knockout. Matt, I do think Ilia Topuria will win this fight. I hesitate a little bit, again, with that length. Jai Herbert, not necessarily the biggest leg kicker, but when his boxing is on, he's great at it. Double jab, pumping that out there, throwing that right hand like he can. Jai Herbert has a great opportunity as an underdog in this spot. I do like the complete game of Topuria, and the guy does not stop trying to take you down. I think that's going to win it for him in this one.
I 100% agree. I don't really think Herbert has an answer for the grappling of Topuria. And the thing about Ilia is that if he is able to get his weight under control, I truly do believe he is destined to be at a minimum a top 10 featherweight. Like, that is the ceiling. And even that might not be giving him the full credit he deserves because that's the kind of special talent he is. But you gotta get your weight in order because even think about this weight class, or at 145. Yair Rodriguez, Max Holloway, like, these are huge fighters who, if they moved up to lightweight, okay, physically, maybe they would be able to hang with some guys, but even they would be undersized. Ilia Topuria is not even a big guy for his own weight class, so I do worry about him a little bit with the size, but really the size is the only hesitation I have about him in this fight. I think he's the much more skilled fighter.
Some hesitations from both of us, but we are both ultimately going with Ilia Topuria in this fight. You let us know down below in the comments section who you have, and a lot of explosive matchups on this card, headlined by Volkov versus Aspinall. You're not going to want to miss it, so keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.